Your relationship with money matters. I'm Michelle Perkins, and this is the Money and You podcast, where I will be breaking down your relationship with money, offering tough love money tips, and a money dating plan that will focus on lifting the barriers to success to help pave the way for better money practices and increased wealth. It's time to take control to live a limit-free life. It starts today. Hello, and welcome to the Money and You show. I'm Michelle Perkins, your host, and I'm here at the ubngo.com studios in Burbank, California. I am going to do a solo show today, and I am going to talk to you about career change and risk-taking, because when we talk about money, when we talk about business or careers, one of the big things that comes up all the time is risk. Should I take a risk? And most people feel that they would need to take a risk to get to some next level that they want to take or go to, and it's always difficult. There are some real risk takers out there. I'm a little bit one of them, but there are people who have a much easier time than others taking a risk. The people I work with often have some trepidation and fear around taking risk. And I get the question all the time in the work that I do with career transitioners and business owners too. And of course with money. Risk is a factor all the time with money. So we're going to come back to that in a minute. But one of the big things that occurs is people decide they can't stand their career. They've got to get out. There's all kinds of reasons that people come to that point where they just feel like, I can't stand doing this anymore. And looking at my life ahead of me and thinking this is what I'm going to be doing forever, that just sounds absolutely awful, and I can't do it. So sometimes people haven't quite gotten to that really bleak point, and they feel that they want to change before that. Maybe they're doing it in a more rational way where they just think, for me to bump up my salary, I need to move around every few years and get that next promotion and that next higher salary. But for a lot of people, it comes down to a point where they're just really unhappy. So if that's you, you can relate to what I'm saying, and you know the feeling, because our rational minds will kind of come in and tell us a lot of reasons why we should do things. But if you feel sick to your stomach on Sunday night, or you feel in your gut like this just is not making you happy, it doesn't feel like it's even worth doing, you're getting no satisfaction, you're not making the money you want to make, you're miserable and tired at the end of the day, these are feelings that are going to inform you if you let them. A lot of people sort of brush them away and say, that's just what work is. That's, this is just how work feels, and I'll have my fun on the weekends. So I don't believe that for a second. I think work can feel really, really good. And I think that should be the goal, not every minute of every day, but overall, I think work should feel like something worth doing, something you enjoy doing, and a place where you're actually using your interests and your talents. And if that's not happening, probably a good time to think about what else you could do. And people come to me often to find out either what they might like to do, because they don't know, they're just lost in that department. They can't, they know what they don't like, they don't know what they would like, or if they do have an idea of what they like, they don't know how to make that happen. So people usually fall in a couple of camps. They're either the people who have no clue what they want to do, they just know they want to do something that feels better than what they're doing. And then I have the people who know exactly what they want to do. They have a very clear direction, just don't know how to go out and get it going. Don't know what actions to take, don't know how to find the job or create whatever it is that they want to create. So two different groups of people, but in both cases they're going through change, and in both cases they feel a great deal of nervousness about the risk that they feel they need to take. So what happens with risk? Risk is so interesting, and I just was listening to a couple of people talk about it, and I thought it was fascinating, their conversation, because when we think about risk, it feels very much like going from 0 to 60 in a 10 seconds. It feels like we're about to jump off of something, and it's either going to go good or it's going to go bad, and that's kind of the end of the story in our brain. And that's not at all the way it needs to work, but that's what we think about. And so we think that any risk we take is a huge deal because it's either going to be a success or a failure in that one one decision. And, it's just such a limiting way to think about risk. And if you think about risk more in terms of a lot of small decisions and small actions that build on themselves, informing you along the way of what's happening, so that your risk is really, it isn't just jumping off a cliff and hoping that you don't die. It's actually something that's more calculated than that. And so I thought it was a really interesting mindset shift around risk, because for the most part, we don't do that thing where we just put blinders on and just, choose something randomly and go for it and hope it works out. We do a lot of thinking ahead of time. And so people are often asking me the question, what if I make this change and it doesn't work out? What if I make this change and I hate it? What if I make this change and I just really actually can't do the job, and I get fired? And so these questions come up often. It seems to be kind of you get very close to an idea, you get excited about it, but then, those questions come up in your mind. And for people who are not willing to take that kind of risk, they do nothing. And so that, I think, is one of the worst decisions. Unless it's a conscious decision that you want to do nothing, you want to stay where you are for all kinds of reasons that you may come up with and that are valid. But if you aren't actually deciding that, if you actually want to make a change, but you're not doing it because the risk feels too great and you're too afraid of that, then that doing nothing is painful. So that just leaves you feeling really bad about yourself, and nothing's changed. And so you continue down this path that you don't enjoy, and you've already identified that you don't enjoy it, but you're not willing to take a risk. So I think it's super important to think about risk in a new way. And I was listening to this conversation and I thought, this is so interesting, because almost every risk we take is actually, there's a whole lot of preparation before we actually take it. So it's not actually even that risky. Could you fail at the job? Sure. Could you hate the job? Sure. I mean, it's going to not be that likely when you do all these foundational things to prepare for it, but it's possible. And that's the other thing, is to accept that possibility and recognize that there are more possibilities and more opportunities beyond that if, in fact, it doesn't work out. And so for some people, some coping mechanisms, knowing they could maybe possibly go back to their old job or, something like that, can be helpful. But for the most part, there is a risk factor. You are going to have to try something that is an unknown, and there is a possibility that it may not go the way you want, just like when you invest money. And you can be, you can feel very secure about what you're investing in, and you can get a lot of good information up front. Could it go bad? Yes, it could. So you sort of have to be comfortable with that on some level, but you don't have to be. It's not, the other thing is, if it goes bad, well, you can see that. You can see it happening. You can get your money back out and put it somewhere else. I mean, these things feel very much like they're do or die. And I think that's what people have to get away from a little bit when it comes to changing jobs, changing their business, maybe restructuring how they do business, the products and services they offer. So it works the same for career changers and business. I think true risk is where you literally don't think about it. You just do something without any thought or any preparation behind it. And not that many people are doing that, especially in job change. Even things that feel or sound risky, like an arranged marriage, for example. There's so much preparation that happens before, even if you've never met that person and you're going to get into an arranged marriage, which doesn't happen very often, but I happen to be watching some shows right now that were making me think about it. And, there's a lot of parental input. There's all kinds of things going on. So that arranged marriage is not actually as risky as it sounds on the surface. So that was a little bit of a weird analogy, I think. But anyway, so you get the point. Risk can be thought of very differently. And when you really, for some reason, we don't focus in on all those steps we're taking ahead of time. We just kind of focus on the potential bad outcome, actually. So that focus, that mindset is really important. And a couple of things that you can do to mitigate risk, a few things, actually, especially in the job search. So I work with people all the time who have these worries. And if you go through certain steps, it's the worries start to diminish, and so this is what happens. Um, you start to get more information, and it's still a risk, but it starts to sort of feel more doable anyway, and you start getting more comfortable with that idea that if it works, there could be a huge upside. If it doesn't work, there might be a downside for a time being, for a period of time, but not forever. And so I think that's the other thing. You're not going to take one big risk. And that was another thing that came up was we think of taking a risk as like, this is our big moment. This is going to be it. This is going to be like the big move that we make, and it has to work. That's not actually how life works. And so that's probably a very limiting way of thinking about it. There'll be more risks to take in the future. Life is a series of decision-making opportunities and risks on small levels that we take all the time. So just getting in my car and coming here today was a risk, actually, but we don't think about those risks. So it's funny when we go to take something like make a career change, it just feels huge. And so how do we approach this so that it's better? One way to start, so if you're thinking about a career change, here's a few things that you can think about that might be helpful, and a process that you can use so that the risk is kind of spread out, and you can see what you're doing in a way that feels less risky. So first thing I would suggest is to start your career change journey with an assessment or two or three. There are many assessments out there that are really, really great at helping you get clarity around who you are and what you're great at and what your strengths and gifts and talents are, and your skills. So one that I love that I mention a lot is Strengths Finders, and that's a great one that you can do on your own. I do that one with clients. I have another one that I'm offering to clients with that addresses your business DNA. So it's not a fully personality-based assessment. It's research-based, and it goes beyond just personality. Looks at values and motivators and strengths and core competencies and work style and sales kind of tendencies and all kinds of really, really interesting aspects of you. And then you're able to put together a whole picture of who you are, how you operate in the workplace, what type of environment might be really good for you, what you care about, how you operate and relate to people. Really a powerful assessment. And once you take those assessments, you start forming a little bit of a new picture of who you are. And you start, getting in touch with your strengths. You get very self-aware, and suddenly that not only helps you see new possibilities, but it also helps you rule out some things that are not working. And it'll help you too if you're unhappy at work to see why that might be. Maybe you're not even able to use your strengths at your job. Maybe the environment is completely opposite of what you would like. Maybe their values don't align with your values. So maybe there's nothing going on in your job that actually motivates you. These are all important things that can be revealed from an assessment. So an assessment is a great place to start. It won't give you the answers. It won't tell you what your next career should be, but it'll inform you as to categories of, jobs and careers that might work out well. The second is, it just builds on this, and it's reflection. So changing jobs and changing your work is all about reflecting on your life and what you've done before, what you've liked, what you haven't liked. Those jobs that you did not like are really important because they do help you figure out what direction you should go in, because knowing what you don't like is super important. And so more reflection. The more you reflect, and after the assessments, you'll have some information to reflect on, and then the more you continue to reflect on who you are. Even asking people around you, asking them to, describe you, give you 5 adjectives that they feel best describes you. These are great exercises, and there are so many more of these that you can do. I have a whole giant series of questions you can answer and exercises to go through that help you get very, very self-aware. and really force you to think back in your life to all the things that once interested you. We had a great show with Mike Mariner from Road Trip Nation, and Road Trip Nation, his book on finding your career path really focuses on figuring out your interests and following those interests, which feels a little different than following a passion, because that sounds like one thing that you've got to identify and know. But just following your interests can take you to some really interesting places. And of course, you should be interested in the work that you do. That's so basic, and yet a lot of people are not. So that reflection piece is really important. And then research. So you come up with more information about who you are and what you like and what your interests are, and then to start looking at companies. It's so easy to do now. You can go on LinkedIn, you can go on any of the job sites like Indeed or Glassdoor, and you can just start researching, what are these companies that sound cool? What sounds like an environment I might like to work in? What sounds like an industry that might use my strengths and interests, or where I could, learn more interesting things about what I'm interested in. So great opportunities these days to do research. And when you read about what companies are doing, what they're about, or any kind of organization, maybe you're more interested in nonprofits, but you can read a lot about what their mission is, what their values are, what people are doing within those organizations. And maybe there are some roles I'm sure, actually, that there are roles that you would have never thought of until you start doing this research. There are a lot of things that are trending, and you may not know what they are if you've been in a job for a long time. So that research piece, again, just starts peeling apart this onion, and you can start understanding more about where you could go, where you could take your interests and your skills and place them in the work world. And then networking. So networking is absolutely one of the best things and one of the most necessary things that people can do in their job search. Networking mitigates a lot of risk because you're actually talking to people who might be doing the jobs that you're interested in doing. And so you're getting an insider's story on what it's like to do that job or work in that company. Networking is huge. And people you network with will know other people that you should perhaps talk to. They will also have ideas they'll know things going on in their own companies that are not published out there that you would never know of otherwise. So networking is just a huge part of doing the research, and also just getting to know people who are possibly going to be allies for you in your job search. Again, each step that you take should be reducing any, some of the risk that you're feeling. It's very important to do this, and you should be starting to feel more comfortable with some of the ideas you had, or you might just toss them out the window because what you're finding out is that it's actually not for you, which is also good because you're narrowing things down. And then there's interviewing. So once you've narrowed it down to maybe you have a few different avenues you want to try, great to start applying to jobs and actually having interviews, because that is where you can get information on that particular job in that particular organization and see, again, does that feel right to you? Does it feel like it's in alignment with what you want, what you're looking for? Are there things that they're looking for that you still don't have that you need? And that will help you too with that risk, that idea of, is this too risky a move? You'll know whether you have too much to learn or whether they're willing to teach you, all of the things that will help you feel like you'll be more successful if you make that move. So those are the 5 things that I just really wanted to highlight: assessments, reflection, research, networking, and interviewing. And once you've taken the time to get into all of those 5 areas and worked within all of those areas to some extent, that sense of this is a huge change, this is a huge leap, and what if, I think a lot of that you'll start moving past that, and you'll start feeling more confident in your ability to try something new. And during that time too, I think it gives you a great opportunity to recognize, well, if I do this and it doesn't work out, what are some other options I have? Because those will start becoming apparent as well. So in order to mitigate that fear and that risk, and to eliminate the possibility that you do nothing, I think those are the 5 steps to take. even if you're just thinking about a career change, even if you're not sure you're ready for that yet, those 5 steps will take you pretty far, and they may inform you even if you want to stay where you are in terms of where you'd like to go within the organization you're already in. So I think those are really important, and I just want to let you know that I focus on this a lot. This is something that I'm very into myself. I work with clients on their career changes, and I have put together a career change kit. And that career change kit includes really 2 parts. It's quite comprehensive. So if you want to go further with this, the career change kit is free. It's online. You can go to limitfreelife.com and access it on the career changers page. And it's a complete document that will help you in the first part to get a little more clear on what you would like to do, so the direction you'd like to take. And then the second part is all about the job mechanics. How do you do all the things from putting a resume together to LinkedIn to interviewing to networking. There's a bit of information on each of those areas. And certainly there are ways to go further, but you will get a really solid, comprehensive starting point with that document. So if you have any thoughts about changing your career, if anybody should be changing their career, pass on that free career change kit. It's in writing, and I've also recorded it on audio. So if you don't want to read, you don't have to. You can listen. So I would just highly recommend that you do that. And if you're telling yourself that you're dying to do something, but you feel there's too much risk and you have too many responsibilities, and it would just be, too difficult in that regard, I would say rethink risk, rethink what risk really is. And is it really as risky as you're feeling it is? And how do you mitigate that? How do you tone down that sense of riskiness so that you can actually get in motion and start doing some things? So that's what's important, is to get moving and see where it takes you. So with that, I will let you go. The tough love money tip for this show, because everyone has one, and even though this is about career change, I want to just remind you that sometimes a job change is a big key to earning more, and a big key to moving you into a place where there's more opportunity to earn more as well. And there's more growth opportunity and the things that will allow you to not only enjoy your job more, but make more money. And so putting it off and being afraid of that risk, there's a big risk in that, because you may be foregoing a lot of income that you could be earning. So all right, so take that money tip and put it together with all the other money tips and start thinking about the possibility of a career change so you can earn more money. Okay, that's it for today's show. This has been the Money and You Show with Michelle Perkins, and we will look forward to seeing you next week. You can subscribe to the show on the Limit Free Life YouTube channel and also on all the podcast platforms. Love it if you would do that and leave us a review and pass it on to your friends. And that way we can bring you more shows. So have a great week and make progress on all that you're doing, and we'll see you next time.